The Black Anglo-Saxon, your favorite neighborhood political scientist, and we back with another episode of From the Hood to the Hill. This time, we will be talking about Cheyenne Bryant, or rather, the economy, the ecosystem of grifting. I've touched on this a while back, but I wanted to rehash this discussion because I found and came across this interesting video that I thought would pair that kinds of takes on this religion of sorts. We are susceptible to a lot of different jargon, whether it be, prosperity around spirituality, economics, financial situations, and whatnot, and not being able to see through that is creating a problem, because one of the things that we're going to have to get really good at, especially in these upcoming times, with everything that's going on, is that we're going to have to be really focused and have a high level of discernment relating to how we move forward. So let me go ahead. I'm gonna bring up this video real quick.
Black people should be offended about the grifters. Not just that they exist, but why they target the Black community in the first place. Everyone's talking about Cheyenne Bryant, Stormy Wellington, Dominique Morgan, and Nature Boy, but nobody's asking the real question, the elephant in the room. Why do grifters and scammers target Black communities at rates they don't target anyone else? What makes Black Americans, Black people, such attractive targets? When you answer that question honestly, you should be insulted. I'm going to address this question from my perspective as a real earned PhD sociologist who specializes in social structures, racial hierarchies, and socioeconomic inequities. And I'll offer you some solutions to help you protect yourself. For centuries, Black Americans have been systematically excluded from mainstream institutions that confer legitimacy, from universities to generational wealth, credentialed mental health care, nonprofit advocacy, professional networks, and the list goes on and on. When you cut people off from legitimate channels, you create a market for counterfeits, imposters. Stormy sold the substitute for wealth, Cheyenne sold the substitute for therapy, Dominique sold the substitute for accountable community advocacy, Nature Boy sold the substitute for spiritual community and Black liberation. They are substitute merchants exploiting systemic gaps while also exploiting the structural cultural vulnerabilities of Black people. It's easy to convince Black people you have a doctorate when 98% of the community doesn't have one. There are some airheads mad at us for calling out Cheyenne, but the few of us who are actually Black doctors have a responsibility to speak up and educate you, because we're the only ones with the inside knowledge to spot the fraud, and we're the only ones who understand the implications of what's happening, including the legal implications. Cheyenne.
Boom. Now, I want to stop it right there because she made a very poignant point, in that in her specific industry, in their specific industry, it's important that they call out Cheyenne Bryant, not because Cheyenne Bryant is Cheyenne Bryant, but because, one, the implications to the whole ecosystem and every other Black person in that industry, in that field, feels the kickback that happens after somebody scams a particular person or a particular group, because now there is a distrust that sets in. But also, she talks about not being able to spot institutional gaps, right? And I talk about all of the time omissions. I talk about what is not being said. Because for me, politically, in politics, these vast, complex ideas, complex situations, these complex narratives often get dwindled down to short snippets. And this is why, for me, one of my solutions is that we have to increase capacity into how we consume, what we consume, and how much we can consume in a way in which it is able to be synthesized and processed and made into something that is usable. Because right now, people can't spot the gaps. And this is why it's also important to have and listen to people who are industry adjacent or inside the industry. And when I say industry adjacent, I mean have either been in the industry for a certain amount of time. I would say at least 5 to 10 years. Well, I would say at least 3 to 5 minimum. And then or also have some type of cross discipline. So in politics, right, most people think that just because you aren't in an elected space means that you aren't engaging in a political body. But when you work in organizations and institutions, you can rise to the level of the political body within that institution. So when you in like C-suite level or you dealing with a lot of different stakeholder management and things of that nature, you are effectively in the political body of the institution, whether it be education, whether it be policing, whether it be medicine, health, etc. Right? But for them specifically, she's talking about being able to identify, for example, you have to go through a certain level of prerequisites, requirements. There's a certain regimen. And what also happens when you are in a specific industry, you start to use the jargon because it's second nature. So, like, you know, or they tease us in DC when you are heavily in government because they call us the alphabet people and not what y'all thinking about, but you get DOJ, DHS, DPER, DHHS, or EOM, and all of these different acronyms. And if you aren't a part of it, it you will read a document and be like, what is this? And it's not because you're dumb, it's because you're not a part of that industry. It's the same thing with attorneys, it's the same thing with legalese and all of these different, if you go into the medical field, every industry has its own set of jargon. And its own set of jargon is a way in which people communicate. And it also serves as shorthand, and it allows people to build the networks and ecosystems around how things operate, right? Because I know, for example, if somebody just say, oh, put out an RFP, a person who works in operations, logistics, and things of that nature, or grant writing, they know off rip what that means, what it entails. But a person who hasn't been in that, and this is where institutional knowledge comes into place, you would have to teach and explain to that person, and eventually they'd be like, "Oh, I get that. That makes sense. You want to request for services." And what happens is, though, in our community, is a lot of it gets lost because we're dealing with people who are perpetually in a mentally childlike state to where you get pushback on things that should be normal and should be understood as it relates to being healthy. And what I mean by that is, in no way, shape, or form should we even have to be really having this conversation. Because in a healthy community, nobody will be able to rise, as she's getting to the point. Because we would not be able to be fleeced if we did not have so many gaps within our knowledge and our understanding. We would not be able to be fleeced if we were willing to consume the candy instead of the substance because it's easier. And just like with over refined foods, your body processes it faster because it lacks nutrients. But the problem with that is that it doesn't sustain the body. And it's the same thing with information. You can't just read anything. You can't just consume anything because doing it in that way presents and creates gaps. And then over time, your mind adjusts the same way your body would adjust to like eating fried food or eating bad foods. And it becomes you feel normal. But after you take a break away from it, you're like, wow, my body is garbage. It's boo-boo. But let me let her finish because this young lady she got a good head on her shoulders, man. Because she is really talking about the deficits and the larger implications of what is the problem with our community.
Credentials are. Stormy profited from people not knowing how pyramid schemes work. Nature Boy profited from Black people not knowing what coercive control looks like. The grift, the manipulation requires information asymmetry, and they count on your gaps. Your ignorance is their greatest asset. So, to revisit my initial question, why do grifters and scammers disproportionately target Black people and the Black community? I'm going to state this so plainly so you are crystal clear about what's happening. They target you because they see you as a sucker. They see you as an easy target, mindless consumers, and an easy lick. And it doesn't help when so many people not only blindly accept what they offer, but you aggressively defend them when they are proven to be a fraud, as so many Black people are doing right now all over this app for free in defense of grifters you don't even know in real life, and you're not even on their payroll. And you even go as far as quickly forgive and forget their violations. They see you as dumb.
About half my audience is Black under the age of 40. How did a white guy attract an audience? Like if I'm out in public and I see a 55-year-old white man or a 25-year-old Black kid, the Black kid knows who I am. There's like wow. there's a 10 times better chance, 10x, that the Black kid knows me. Now the reason is because we go after that audience and we're talking to them in very street terms, if you will, very not big nomenclature, vocabularies. You know, we just keep everything very tight and simple. So
what are the solutions to reduce your likelihood of being a sucker and an easy target? What can you do to put the power back into your hand?
So you heard what this gentleman said, right? And this is where I say and why I say that in some cases, yes, simplifying things has its advantages. Simplifying things does need to be done, especially depending on the audience that you're catering it to, right? But in no way, shape, or form should I have to talk to adults and oversimplify to the point in which it loses its substance. Because as I've said before, we are dealing with levels of complexity that we have not dealt with before in terms of society. So the more you refine something down, it loses the substance. It doesn't lose the substance. It creates gaps in the information. So if I am condensing down a segment for you all that it took me a month, 2 months of research, life experience, and all of these different combination of things to be able to explain to you, and I condense it down into 20 minutes, there are gaps in what I am saying and articulating that you don't understand. You only have bits and pieces of what is in here. So certain things that a person might say, you feel like is false or is wrong or you don't understand it because there are gaps in alignment. And what happens in that is that, again, staying on the analogy with how your body processes food, is that if you don't, let's say, have certain amounts of calcium in your body or certain amounts of vitamin D in your body, if you eat potassium, fiber, and other nutrients, your body cannot absorb other nutrients based on the prerequisite of having the vitamin D and the calcium that helps your body absorb the salt, the other stuff that you're putting into it to try to become and reach a capacity over being malnutrition. Because you need those prerequisite vitamins to be able to absorb the other vitamins. And you can't skip it. Because if you, for example, if you've ever read a philosophical book, right? Like something from Nietzsche or Socrates, Plato, The Republic, or Beyond Good and Evil, you, again, if we're being honest, you're like, what are they talking about? What are they getting at? And you would have to put that book down sometimes, go read maybe 3 other books or material, or even have a lived experience. And immediately, that thing that you read in Beyond Good and Evil is like, I get it now. That's what that is, because it has to connect to something. And what she's talking about is the fact that our community has gaps in not having access to wealth, money, institutions, etc. We cannot spot fakes because you have not been close enough to it to know what it really looks like, how it really moves, how it really functions. And a lot of this stuff is performative. And you hear the white guy come on the back end and talk about how we speak to them in nomenclature. And this is the trick of how you invite people to the cookout who are exploiting you because they've studied you. And this is what we have to understand about quote unquote oppression. We have a group and body of people who study us constantly. It's in a constant, perpetual state of being studied, observed, and witnessed. And it's been put into data points. It has been institutionalized. It has been put in into a operationalized set of movements that create outcomes. So policies, the executive body, how they police, those are examples, right? But the same thing happens with the grifter economy. And this is an important conversation because as people become poorer, as people become more desperate, more people are going to try to grift on things that you hold here, that you hold here. So you got to move what you hold here in your heart up here. Because the more you hold something as a belief system, as a religion, people can sell you on it without having really substantive information, evidence, etc., to undergird it, to hold it, to have a foundation. It can just exist the way our money exists now through this weird financial market where people just type in numbers. And we have to get to a point in space where, like she said, if you really, really, really want to have a reckoning with yourself, you have to think about why us, because we're the dummies, we're the marks, we are the easily fleeceable. The Negroes over there don't know no better. That's how people think. And even our own observe and say, this is part of the game. Fleece them, gain access to real, or I wouldn't even say real, relative wealth, and build on that off the backs of the ignorant. But the problem with that collectively is that we lose value because, as I said in the previous video, for every Black person who does an exploitive operation like that, we lose credibility. We lose resources. We lose community because it becomes harder to trust. The money that you gave them can't get it back. They done spent it on some BS. And we become that much more entrenched in nihilism. And it's hard to get people out of nihilistic thinking because it is something that is believed here, not here. Most people reach nihilism through feeling an emotion, not through logical deduction. And I'm not placing a value on either one or the other in terms of emotion versus logic. They are tied and interwoven and linked together. That's something else that people have to get out of because I hear a lot of conversations about which one is better. It's not better or worse. They're used in different situations and scenarios and sometimes in tandem because the merger of the two is what builds very strong intuition because you have the logic that undergirds the patterns and you get to the emotion of like, nah, I know what this is. I can't provide the evidence right now, but I know this is a fraudulent thing because I've seen enough real tangible evidence information. I've been in and around these institutions to know better. And especially in politics, you get to hear BSers BS all of the time. So you have an ear for it. You know, oh yeah, just the cadence of how somebody talk, how they move in their body language, how they, it's all different kinds of tells. When I'm watching somebody give a conference or I'm watching somebody have a conversation about a particular thing or when and how they choose to come off of their square or the reason that they came off of their square, all of those things are telltale signs as to where that person truly stands. And if you can't spot that, I can come off of that square to as a manipulation tactic and not necessarily a change or shift in my true values. I just see that the weather and the wind has shifted and the opportunity is there. But I thought that was a great video. Shout out to that young lady. Her TikTok, I made sure I followed it because I really also, the thing is we got to encourage and create space for people who have nuanced takes because that's one of the solutions. We got to, again, I'm not trying to step on nobody, but for people who have a nonsensical or irrelevant, non-impactful conversations, you can exist, but this is not the moment. The moment right now, we have to be really focused. We have to be really pinpoint on where we're going, the direction, because time is of the essence. We can get back to party and BS later. But right now, we actually have to solve a problem. So it's behoove us to be vigilant. It's behoove us to be more wise. It's behoove us to fill our own gaps. And it's okay to be like, I don't understand. It's okay to be like, I don't know. It's okay to move with caution. It's okay when a person is talking and you're listening to a podcast and that person has some error in their voice because all of these people who just speak with such high levels of conviction, but they don't have the lived experience or the expertise and body of work to demonstrate that level of conviction that comes out with such fluidity, beware of it. Because anybody I listen to with that level of conviction, I go and I look them up. I need you better have at least 10 years of experience. I need to hear and understand what it is you study, what it is you consume. And I listen to your videos over a period of time to see if it's consistent. Because I can't need you all over the place, especially when it comes to these political conversations and these conversations around not even the social science conversations, because the political conversations sometimes get merged in because politics is, or political scientist is a social science, but I like to think of it as an applied social science versus what a lot of other people do, which is more academic, right? And I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying that political science, you have to apply it. It's you got to take that hypothesis and you got to put that into play in motion. A lot of academics get caught up in just the theory, just the study. So the social sciences exist kind of more on an academic level, but I think people overly conflate that. But again, that's something also, if you've been around it long enough, you can pick up on it. And again, that's not to say one is bad or one is good. They're used for very different things. And politics, political sciences tend to have a more interdisciplinary mind. They can pull from all different industries, all different facets, all different walks of life. So when you hear them talk and you are like, oh, they're not making sense. They're going around Uncle Robert's barn. No, they're not. What they're doing is pulling analogies, all different frameworks, and they're molding it into one. It's a level of creation. And unfortunately, our politicians are not political scientists, so they don't have the creative imagination to build a world, to create a world, to pivot out of the darkness. And that's why we have the issue that we're having. But happy, beloved, enjoy. Let me know what y'all think, and I'll catch y'all on another one.